Ever notice how ads always pop up at the worst moments? When the killer's identity is about to be revealed. During that perfect meditation flow. On Amazon Music, we believe in keeping you in the moment. That's why we've got millions of ad-free podcast episodes, so you can stay completely immersed in every story, every reveal, every breath. Download the Amazon Music app and start listening to your favorite podcasts ad-free, included with Prime.
How can it get any better than now? What would happen if? Have you asked yourself these questions? Should you? Have you ever thought the answer all the way through? What would be the impact if? Stay tuned and find out.
Welcome.
Okay, here's the question.
You serious?
How are we dark horses? You know, the ones everyone is betting against, the ones they don't expect to win, place, or even show on the track, and they'll even laugh on us when we talk about trying. How do we show the world our greatness and triumph?
Come on.
Well, that's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. This is The Dark Horse Entrepreneur. My name is Tracy Brinkman.
And push it out.
Well, welcome back to your weekly dose of From the Deathbed to a Whole New Life and New Year Learning. I'm your Dark Horse host, Tracy Brinkman, and you, well, that's infinitely more important. You are a driven entrepreneur or one in the making. Either way, you're here because you're ready to start, restart, kickstart, or just start leveling up with some great marketing, personal, or business results in order to build that beautiful business of yours into the empire it absolutely deserves to be. Here we have another big episode today. Today, Gronich shares not only an amazing story of going from his deathbed to a whole new life, but prompts us to ask the question, what if? You're going to want to check this one out. Plus, I'm going to let you in on next week's interview guest who helps entrepreneurs and business owners to close more premium sales. As per usual, the Dark Horse Corrals are chock full of personal, business, and marketing GOLD spilling from every corner of the Dark Horse HQ. So let's get to the starting gates and go. All right, my Dark Horse friends and families, today's guest is none other than Gronich, the performance therapist. Arnie is one of the most sought after therapists and trainers for elite athletes, corporate culture and wellness, and internationally as an industry keynote speaker. He's a best-selling author, founder and CEO of Achieve Health USA and the Performance Therapist Academy, and can be found interviewing new world changers on his new podcast called Create a New Tomorrow. Arnie Gronich, welcome to the Dark Horse Entrepreneur. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here, and we finally are able to have this conversation. So I'm excited.
I know we tried a couple of times to get this going, and there's just I know at one point I was so stuffed up that I probably would have sounded like this on the microphone. Didn't think that would provide too well of an opportunity for you. But all that said, I'm glad we're here now. I really want to step back from the mic and let you take front and center. This is all about you. Tell your story, the good, the bad, the ugly, all the things that brought you to where you are today and why you love doing what you do so much.
There is definitely a lot of good, bad, and ugly in that story.
Okay.
For sure. I started out in life as a gymnast, baseball player, tennis player, long distance cycler, martial artist. I was an athlete growing up. I played baseball for 8 years, and I kept getting injured, and it took a long time for me to recover. And when my dad was going to a chiropractor, so I went to the chiropractor. That started at age 5, and I actually ended up getting paid for my first massage when I was 5 years old.
Oh, nice!
At a parents' party get together, I started rubbing somebody's shoulders. They gave me $2. I said, "Hey, that's better than allowance." And I went around the entire party, $2 for a massage, $2 for a massage, and so. Technically that's when I got started. But at age 7, I literally on my birthday, I was having migraines and hot flashes and headaches and throwing up. And what I didn't realize, what nobody realized, was that it was the beginning of an autoimmune disorder because I had a brain tumor. And the brain tumor, think about it. Age 7 was when I started having symptoms. Age 12, I basically said, I'm not going through puberty. I don't know what's going on. So I started having to inject into puberty. By the age of 14, I had breast reduction surgery because I was, it's called gynecomastic surgery. And it was because, obviously, male breast tissue was growing, massive estrogen imbalances. And then you combine that with, so I have all this medical stuff going on and injuries going on. And you combine it with the fact that I was molested and raped from 3 years old to my early teens, multiple times, multiple people, different people. And you have the makings of somebody who's not a very happy person.
Yeah, absolutely.
very unusual. So, in my high school years, I was in Air Force ROTC and in theater and show choir. So not two things that really kind of tend to go together, right?
Yeah.
Plus I'm an athlete and I'm not a very good student, but I'm a great studier. And so I learn a lot of information, highly intelligent. And so I'm thinking, okay, so I'm learning, teaching myself about history and philosophy and religion and having those kinds of conversations. And yet in the medical side, I can't figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. And so I turn 18, I graduate high school, I go whitewater rafting with my parents. I'm taking a homeopathic remedy because the doctors haven't been able to figure me out. So I go to a naturopath to see if he could figure me out. He gives me a remedy of, I guess it was snake venom, and whitewater rafting, heat stroke, sunstroke, kind of a perfect storm. I ended up dead in the hospital for 26 minutes.
Oh, damn.
And so here I am going, okay, what's going on? I've tried the traditional medical. I'm 18, right? I've tried the traditional medical. I've tried alternative medical. Nothing's helped. What do I do? That wasn't necessarily the conscious thought that was going on in my head, but I'm sure it was there somewhere. But basically 3-4 days into being in the hospital after finally waking up from this ordeal, I pop up in the bed and I said, I think I need to be a healer. And that, my dear friend, is how it all began.
Well, you're right. There's a lot of good, bad, and ugly in that in that story. And that's probably just the beginning of your journey at that point, right?
Oh, that doesn't even, that's like such a small part of what made me who I am, being Jewish and Catholic. So I started life as a Jewish person. My mother Jewish, my dad had converted, but my grandmother Peruvian Catholic. Mm-hmm. So we have those mixed bags of things that don't really match, right?
Sure.
And then at age 9, my parents lost their business, had it stolen from them. So their business partner locked the doors, stole about $250,000 worth of equipment, and left us having to sell our house and in a bad place. That was the first time I tried to kill myself.
Oh,
so
my.
That was age 9. Started doing drugs, and My past is interesting. I started studying Buddhism. I had a girlfriend who lived on an Indian reservation, so I studied Indian culture quite a bit. I loved to learn about people. My favorite books have always been historical nonfiction biographies. Mm-hmm. It's funny because I'm reading my son these value books that I read when I was a kid. And it's basically, I'll give you an example. We just read Understanding, the Value of Understanding. And the character is Margaret Mead. And, she was an anthropologist who really sought to understand human nature and people and the nature of people in different environments. And so I did that as a child. Now I'm reading those to my son who's 6, and he loves these books. and they're all about values and stuff like that. So I had all these mixed messages going on in life. I was very bullied for being, I grew up in a town that it was not okay to be Jew.
Sure.
It was not okay to be a big guy. And I had these hormone imbalances, and I kept getting bigger and bigger, no matter how much exercise I did or sports or anything, just kept growing. So I was this oddball out who spent a lot of time watching and observing the world because I wasn't really allowed to participate in it. Mm-hmm. And I never knew how much that really affected me until, I was an adult going, well, check 1, check 2, check 3. Right. Here's things that created me when people started asking me, why are you who you are? Mm-hmm. That was really how it began. And so at 18, I ended up homeless for a year in Portland, Oregon, which is very wet and cold. And living under bridges and in tents and in my car while I was working a full-time graveyard job at 7-Eleven. Wow. I was training a security team in martial arts and at the Portland Saturday Market. And I was working at my school. I ended up going to a massage school, and it was the best decision I ever made, was going to this particular school, because the things that fell into my lap were incredible in the industry. You just don't see it.
Okay, you got to dig in a little bit deeper right there. So what I heard was you were homeless. This is the same time frame, right? At 18, you were working at 7-Eleven, a graveyard shift. You were teaching martial arts, and you decided to go to massage school, and that was the best decision you made. Why? Some things fell into place, obviously.
Well, I was paying for the school while homeless. But by my third month in this school, so the teacher, the owner of the school, had been a therapist for over 40 years. Okay. So she didn't know how to run a school, but she knew the top experts, everybody in the industry. And she would fly them to the school, to Portland, to teach us that specific modality in a intensive way.
Sure.
And so people like Ida Rolf, Zhenya Kurashova, Ida Rolf is Rolfing. People have heard of Rolfing. Zhenya Kurashova was one of the top Russian sports therapists, her family legacy in Russian gold. So we had a shaman, master kahuna from Hawaii come and do temple lomi lomi with us. We had an instructor from Oregon Health and Science University do all of our anatomy and physiology and kinesiology, and take us into the school to OHSU to do cadaver labs. I mean, who's heard of that happening? Right. In a massage school, for instance. We learned Tantra, we learned Reiki, we learned foot reflexology, Chinese massage. We had a blindfold instructor, or a blind instructor, who would teach us and blindfold us while we were working and then guide us. And so just an incredible opportunity within the school.
Sure.
But by my third month working there, I was running the clinic.
Wow.
I was the only person that the owner of the school would have touch her, which was, it's a good, nice compliment.
Sure.
By my fourth month, our school backed up to the campuses of Intel, Nike, and Tektronix in Beaverton, Oregon. And by my fourth month, as I was running the clinic for a month, and I was going, I think we need more clients. So, well, why don't we just go to these companies? And thereby literally creating and starting 3 of the first corporate wellness programs in our country with these major corporations. How that happened literally is beyond me. It did. By my 6th month, we had an event at the Rose Garden, big health fair. And so our school had a presence at the health fair. I ended up working on Richard Simmons,
Oh,
Now, some people that listen to your show may not know who Richard Simmons is.
so yeah, right. Some of the folks that are not in my age bracket.
Right. Okay. But you know who he was.
I do.
And that's a pretty amazing experience. Victoria Jackson, I worked on her. She was an ESPN, kind of like a Jane Fonda aerobics instructor on ESPN back in the 80s and early 90s. And then a couple professional sports athletes came in.
Okay.
And I ended up working on them. Well, they liked my work so much that I ended up at the game that night on the court.
Okay.
And for the next year, I was on the court with them, watching surgeries, learning from the athletic trainers, learning from the personal trainers, learning from the coaches. I mean, literally, I got to be inside of a knee surgery, like things that you just wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity. So by my third year in practice, I had over 5,000 hours of training and internships. And just to give a little perspective on that, the average medical school is 3,800 hours to become a doctor. Chiropractor is 4,200 hours. So you can kind of get the idea that the training I had was pretty extensive.
Yeah.
And very specific. It was kind of that master apprentice style of training. So I just, from there, have been able to work with Olympic athletes, Paralympics. I was at the 2004 Olympics or Paralympics in Athens, had an amazing team that I worked with there, and some awesome athletes. One of the athletes ended up putting a gold medal around my neck after breaking pretty much every world and Olympic and Paralympic record there is to break in his sport. And so I've had a pretty interesting career, but
I'll say
definitely has had a lot of good, bad, ugly.
Nice. No, that's I'm fascinated because I'm doing the math here. So if you started the massage school around 18, by about year 3 years in practice, right? You're in your early 20s and you're already kicking it with, big name athletes and headed towards the Olympics. And so that's an early start of it. What's got to be an amazing career going the rest of the way.
Yeah, I am 44 and, I don't mind saying 26 years, more than a quarter of a century in one job.
That's
never thought that was going to happen, but what you do has been pretty amazing. What accomplished. So,
and clearly you love it because I know you've started some movements around, paradigm shifting and being active in, alternative health cares and what have you, correct?
Yeah. So, I wrote a book recently called Create a New Tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And it's really my frustration with watching what has happened to our world just in my lifetime with the onset of over 70,000 chemicals being introduced into our environment.
Right.
And then I watch people accept the reality of what is versus being proactive and outraged. Really the word is outraged. Mm-hmm. It upsets me that people are not outraged more than they are with what we've allowed to happen in the world. And so Create a New Tomorrow is really the book, A New Tomorrow, and the podcast, Create a New Tomorrow, is really about how do we get back to cognitive reasoning, eliminate the cognitive dissonance going on, get back to critical thinking and common sense. And when does somebody who, say, works in a field like medicine, mm-hmm. right, who absolutely knows that what they're doing is not performing at the level at which they even would want to perform at, but it's how the system is dragging them down. What is it going to take to get these amazing, caring, loving doctors to stop being afraid of the bully, so to speak, the AMA, the insurance companies, the pharmaceutical companies? These are bullies.
Yep.
What's it going to take to get them to organize and stand up and fight for themselves and for their communities. What's it going to take in medicine? What's it going to take in agriculture for the farmers who are having to wear hazmat suits instead of overalls, right? And spraying food, spraying the pesticides on the food that they wouldn't put on their own food.
Mm-hmm.
What's it going to take for them to get loud? What's it going to take to end and stop the bullies? And I always say a bully's best friend is the silence of the victim.
Amen.
The silence of others is a bully's best friend. How do we stop a bully? We get really loud about it.
Yeah.
Hey, you're bullying me.
Right.
Teacher, he's bullying me. Mm. And I think he's bullying this person and this person and this person and this person too.
Yeah.
Right. We get loud about it to the point where they cannot do it anymore. It's the only way to stop a bully.
Yep. It's funny you mentioned the pesticides when my now wife, when we first met, I was living in Ohio and she was living out in the Bay Area in Northern California. And, we did the long distance thing for a while, and I moved up into the Wisconsin area, Southeast Wisconsin, just north of Milwaukee. And then eventually, she moved out here. So I flew out there and we packed up everything and we were driving across the country. And I remember driving through some of the amber waves of grain that we hear in the national anthem, right? And we're driving through these just miles and miles and miles of, just fields, corn here, whatever, different types. But there was a long stretch where, when you're driving across country, one of the things you have to do almost every time you stop for gas is clean off your windshield, because bugs, right?
Right.
Well, there was this long stretch and we both looked at each other and we were asking the questions like, there are no bugs hitting the windshield. And it was like that. And after we said it out loud, we purposefully were paying attention at this. And, we're pretty aware of a lot of the things you're calling out, especially, my wife is very into nutrition and fitness, and she's raised my awareness, and I thought I was pretty good at it. She has leveled me up, and I know probably to your level of awareness, we're probably like this, but still it was really kind of a scary thought as we're driving easily 100 miles through, like Nebraska or one of those states like that, where, it's all about farmland, no bugs.
You're now listening to the Dark Horse Entrepreneur Podcast.
And it also made us notice there were no birds, because, that's what do the birds eat? Bugs. And, maybe some of the produce. And if the birds don't want the produce and the bugs don't want the produce, God knows I don't want to eat it. And of course you see those signs, right? Whatever, Monsanto and some code. And you're like, I get it. I know why there's no bugs here. It's really kind of scary.
It is. It's not only scary for the health effects of us, but the ecological effects that people really aren't paying attention to. Mm-hmm. If we were to do a natural, farming cycle, for instance, there are plants that we plant next to the plants that we want that stop the bugs from getting on those plants. Every farmer in history knows what those plants are. There are certain bugs that, certain plants that will stop mosquitoes from coming. There's certain plants that will stop, and those are all natural to the environment around. Yep. But because we have monocultured our cropping, so every year, all the time is corn here, potato here. Well, that's not how seasons work. That's not how life works.
That's not how Mother Nature works.
Nature works. So we have, I would say if you're a religious person who believes that, believes in an almighty planner, mm-hmm. right? And then you're also the person who's working to alter that plan that he created or she created or whoever it is created.
Right.
I'd say you're pretty much being a hypocrite to yourself, right? Because we're trying to do something as though we are gods.
Yeah.
And God made the environment a certain way so that it would function in that way.
And then, so replenish itself and create this cycle of living. Yeah.
Right. So when we alter it in one aspect of nature, we alter it in every aspect of nature,
yeah.
including us, because we are nature. We are nature. We're not outside of nature. Like, it seems like a lot of people think that that humans are outside of nature, either above, below, whatever. We're outside of nature a little bit. And we're not. We are part of nature. We're a creature in nature. We just happen to have this cognitive ability and these fingers, that oppose
this guy right here. Yeah. The thumb. Yeah.
These fingers. So, what we're doing, cognitive dissonance, is amazing. How much we're thinking that we have no effect on the rest of the environment, on the rest of nature, is unbelievable. I mean, I just watched a documentary called Connected it's on Netflix, and it talks about how interconnected everything is. And it basically talks about how the dust from the Sahara in Africa blows over to South America and fertilizes the ground so that the Amazon could be the Amazon.
Right.
You can't get more connected than that. So what is it with people not thinking that we're connected, trying to be gods instead of trying to understand what God's plan was, the creation was, the thing is, right? Mm-hmm. that we're trying to do, and then not go against that, but go with it.
Yeah, work with it. Absolutely.
That work with nature instead of against nature, so that we can still feed everybody. We can still create food. We can still create everything that we've created out of the figment of our imagination, right? But we've made this whole thing up, and somehow we've gotten glued to the thing we've made up instead of getting glued to the creativity and the imagination that allowed us to make stuff up.
Right. No, I'm with you there. I think one of the things, also, I'll call it the big players that are involved in a lot. I think what you're talking about is, they're in it for the almighty dollar, the power factor, right? I don't see the giving back part of it, and I think back when they first started, right? And we won't, everyone knows the organizations we're talking about. We've called out a couple of them, but I think maybe when they first started, they had intentions. They thought, well, hey, here's what we'll do. But it stepped up and it stepped up and it spiraled and it spiraled. Maybe somebody grabbed a hold and says, oh man, I know what we can do with that. And now there these big money machines, pushing pills down our throats, right? Pushing chemicals onto our foods to produce more foods. And oh my gosh, that kills the ground. We're pulling all the nutrients out of the ground. Well, we have a chemical for that too, and it creates this vicious cycle. Whereas if we could step back and say, look, dude, if we just did it like it was supposed to be done, hey, this year it's corn, next year it's soy, next year it's beans and what have you. Because like you said, farmers know this. They're like, dude, if I stop putting corn and I put this there, well, then the nutrients that corn needs gets back into the ground naturally. And then 2 or 3 years through the cycle, I put corn back there, and you keep that rotation cycle going, and it's all good. But there's power players in the mix. Anyway, wow, we've gone down a rabbit hole here, and I'm actually enjoying it, enjoying the conversation. I do want to loop it back around though. One of the things, and I'm a big fan of motivation, right? I say it all the time, find things that motivate yourself, and I know. And I do say it a lot, motivation isn't enough. And I know it's one of the things you kind of adhere to as well, correct?
Right. So Mel Robbins, do you know who that is?
I do.
Okay. So she says motivation sucks or motivation is meaningless.
Yep.
She has a lot of sayings about motivation, because the fact of the matter is we have motivation. Everybody has a motivation in life, right? The problem is actualizing that motivation.
Right.
You go to an event and you get motivated at the event, and then 3 weeks later, you're not in that atmosphere of energy anymore, and the motivation dies down. Well, it's not that the motivation died down. It's the energy around the motivation that died down.
Yeah.
And it's the experience of coming back and being amongst the people that you were around, where their motivation may not be the same level as yours. And so you fall into the energy that's around you, things like that. But the fact of the matter is that motivation means nothing without action, and action means nothing without a plan. And a plan means nothing without knowing who you are. Because if you create a plan for somebody else's life that you thought you wanted, right? I want to be Tim Robbins, or Tony Robbins, right? I want to be Tony Robbins. So I'm going to try to structure my life around the way his life is. Well, then you find out, oh, wait, I don't like this life. This is not my life, right? So you got to figure out who you are first. And in order to do that, you've got to take the pieces that are blocking you from being who you are and wipe them away. And so that's the traumas, the ill health, really, the food we eat, the exercise we get or don't get, the things that we do that we like to do. Do you like to go to the gym or do you like to play tennis? Do you like to play baseball? Do you like to play kickball? Do you like to do sports and activities with groups of people, or do you like to do them alone? Okay. Now we're starting to get the way that somebody gets motivated. Now, this may seem odd, right? But if I have an Olympic athlete come in and see me, for instance, I'm not just treating them for the injury that they have or helping them to get to the goal that they want. Because if I give them stuff to do that they don't do because it doesn't fit in their life, then I'm not giving them the service that they need, right?
Sure.
So I spend about an hour to 2 hours, sometimes longer, asking them questions about who they want to be, about the experiences that they've had in life, about the things that are stopping them, the things that are motivating them, the things that make them who they are. So I'll give you an example. I had a good conversation with one of my ex-clients on Create a New Tomorrow. And this is a guy who was in the top 10 for over a decade, went for 4 Olympics, made 2, right? And the 2 were split. So he didn't make them in a row. And the ones that he missed by getting 4th place on both. To win 4th place on both, right? So I'm asking him questions. What happened? Well, why was that? Well, what were you thinking? What was in your head? Oh, I'm supposed to be the best, so I should be doing this. And I got in my head and I got the anxiety going. And so, okay, so you have there's a mindset, there's a food, there's spiritual level, there's traumas that you've been through in life that have both propelled you forward and held you back. And so we got to figure out which one is which, right?
Right, totally.
That way, we get a full diagnosis, so to speak, of a person's life. And then we can go about the process of guiding them into healing those aspects that they need to heal, into accentuating the aspects that they need to accentuate, figuring out the things that they are doing subpar or on par, what's in their mind, we go through a very, very detailed process. I do this when I do masterminds as well with the people who come into a mastermind, because if I don't know who you are, I can't ensure that you're going to get the benefit of my work. And if you don't get the benefit of my work, then I have failed. And if I fail, then nobody else is going to come see me. That's been my philosophy. If I was a doctor today, I would never have another client, because I could never let a patient wait in a waiting room for an hour or 2. I could never do a 7-minute session and think that I was helping them with my recommendation. It's not possible. And that is what the insurance companies have kind of mandated at this point. That's what's necessary for a doctor to even get money enough for them to live, let alone have a thriving practice.
Wow.
People don't understand this. There was a time when doctors were wealthy.
Yeah.
Now doctors are in debt, and in some cases driving worse cars than their secretary, because of the insurance companies, because of school debt, because of all these systemic issues. And so they're suffering this moral, conundrum on, I went to school to be of service and be of help. The system I went into is not letting me do that. And they're threatening me that if I talk about it,
right,
I'm gonna get sued. I'm gonna get fined. I'm gonna get my license taken away. Whatever it is, systemically ostracized. And yet, I'm old enough and I studied enough history to know that what did the doctors do in the 1920s and before that?
Yeah.
Went to your home. They spent a week there sometimes living with you to find out how you lived. And by doing that, they got a very well-rounded version of who you are and who you want to be, so that when they went to help you, it was not a hit or miss. It wasn't like throwing darts at a dartboard. It was, I know what's wrong because I've experienced what you're experiencing. So now I know what to do for you. And that's the same way that I've looked at my entire career, but also the way I talk to what I consider is the people who really need to step up and activate themselves to change this really broken, really crappy system. And it's not about who's the payer of the system. Right. None of that conversation that's being held politically is about the issues at hand. Just who's paying for those issues. Right.
Yeah.
So it's not going to make a difference other than, maybe in one system versus the other, more people will be able to get seen, but they're going to get more intervention. And anything that this whole pandemic has shown us is that medical intervention at the level we were doing pre-COVID was killing more people than it was helping, because we've had a massive drop in medically connected deaths.
Oh,
massive.
I will have to go look that one up. I'm sure you're right, but I hadn't researched that one at all.
Well, nobody's doing these elective procedures, and even some of the things that we were having done with intervention that we stopped that are more necessary, that has only increased certain populations, issues, but the total death toll from medicine has gone down.
Nice. Well, I guess there's the silver lining on this pandemic cloud going on, right?
Yeah, it'll definitely take some time to really study all of the numbers.
Sure, absolutely.
That entails. But the idea is that what we've been doing is not working. So let's stop doing that and do something different. And how can we get the people in the field and the people who are affected by this stuff, to stand up and say no more. So diabetic, if you've got cancer, if you've got heart disease, if you've got any of these number 1, number 2, number 3 killing things, 99% of that is preventable by your lifestyle and your choices. And the caveat is the system may not be allowing you to exercise your rights as readily as you might think, because the organic food, which is much, much better and healthier, the free-range chicken is not what's subsidized. Corn is subsidized, soy is subsidized, flour and wheat is subsidized. These are things the government pays through our tax dollars to subsidize because they're much more expensive to produce. However, they need to be cheap to consume. And so we actually, every time you spend money on flour, on corn, on soy, on any of these products, and it's in pretty much everything now, you're actually paying for those with your money, right? You're paying the people down the line with your tax money too. And you may not realize that, you may not know that, but that's the facts. The facts, man.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm lucky enough because of my wise wife that I mentioned earlier. I'm in the know of these things, and they're pretty scary. I mean, I thought I was in the know before, but after she shared more knowledge with me and continues to do so, and helps me keep abreast of things, and then that makes me want to go out and learn more. You're absolutely right. You're spot on, and yeah, more power to you there. Okay, so. What is Ari up to these days? And share a little bit with everyone that's listening about Create a New Tomorrow, the podcast, and what all of Ari's goodness you have going on these days.
Yeah. So, again, Create a New Tomorrow, the podcast is really about getting this message across. And I'm interviewing Olympic athletes. I've interviewed organizational psychologists. I've interviewed regular psychologists, doctors, chiropractors, pretty much anybody in this industry, activists. I've got an amazing interview that I'm doing on Friday with a $1 billion woman who is, everybody will know who this person is because she's been in everybody's home for years and years and years selling them stuff. So that's all about pitching and what is it that the message is that you're saying and what's the manipulation happening in the message. So it's nice. A thing, talking to government officials about how do we change the system, but really it's about the listeners. So the listeners, I want the people who listen to the podcast to really, really, really get actionable steps that they can take to change the world, because I believe that everybody is passionate about something, and they just don't know how to activate themselves, how to get that message across to the masses. And so, this is really about how do we do it in actionable steps. So every episode at the end, we ask the guest 3 actionable steps that somebody can take today, tomorrow, to start changing their world for the better. Because if we change our own personal world, we'll start changing our family's world. We'll then change the community. We'll then change this county. We'll then change the
right. It's a snowball, right?
Snowball. The better off we treat ourselves, the better we treat others. I always used to say, what would happen if you got pulled over for speeding and the police officer gave you a massage instead of a ticket?
Yeah, that's a good question. I like that.
Probably relax you. It'd probably calm you down. Maybe if you were really angry or frustrated after work and you got that little bit of a shoulder rub, you'd drive a little bit slower. You'd get home. You'd be nicer to your wife or your husband and your children. You wouldn't have to drink so much or take any drugs. I mean, just little things that we can do. What if we planted fruit trees in a park and berries in a park instead of oak trees that take the same amount of maintenance, but they don't provide food? What if we did that and people could get the really fast food, and didn't spray them with stuff because, plants have been growing for a lot of years without chemicals. They didn't need the chemicals to survive.
Yeah. They didn't need us to do it, right?
Didn't need us. They didn't need the chemicals. They just needed the land and the water, and oil, right? And so,
absolutely.
So what if we were to do little solutions, little bits of things? And everybody who's listening to this, if you're passionate about something, there are so many easy, cheap, free kinds of solutions that don't take massive amounts of energy and thought. But what would happen if? It's a good question. What would happen if I did this instead of that tomorrow? What would happen if I didn't have that cigarette, if I didn't eat that extra bowl of sugar, if I didn't, what would happen if I chose to exercise instead? What would happen if, and, we start asking this question, what would happen if, and all of a sudden you get, how can it be any better than this? It's a kind of pun question. It's a punny question, but how can it get any better than this? How can it get any better than this? And then your mind starts working on that question of how can it get any better than this?
I like it.
And as your mind is working on that question, the solutions will come. And if you're passionate about something, this is to your audience, to my audience, to everybody's audience. If you're passionate about something, instead of letting it be a big wall that stops you, let it be a question that consumes you. So that you will do what you're passionate about and change the world for the better, one person at a time. So
that's money right there. You heard it from Ari himself. Change the world one person at a time. All right. So, Mr. Ari, I've been enjoying our time together here, but I want to be mindful of it. If folks wanted to check more of Ari and all his awesomeness out, where can they reach you at?
Yeah, so you could go to createanewtomorrow.com or achievehealthusa.com, and Ari Gronich at everywhere. So whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Ari Gronich everywhere. There's not a lot of me. I think I'm the only one on the planet.
Yeah, you're probably an easy search to do, right?
Yeah, with my first and last name, I don't think that there's anybody else on the planet that have that. So I'm pretty easy to search. And you know, I love connecting with people and being somebody of service. So, you know, please do reach out. And you know, my last podcast interview went 2.5, 3 hours almost.
Ooh, nice.
And that was when I was on his show. We just did an interview this morning, and he was on my show, and it was almost 2 hours. I think it was a little over 2 hours for that show. So, you know, I could talk forever. I hope that what I'm saying has impact more than just me hearing myself talk.
No, I think it will. There's definitely been some gems you have dropped in here that I think is going to move the needle on more than one person listening. And if not, you know, they'll come back to it later on when they're ready. As you know, we're not always ready when we hear the message the first time. They'll loop back around and they're like, you know, I remember that Ari guy was talking. Let me check him out. But I want to make sure I'm going to get all those links to all of your socials and the websites in the show notes so people can find you really easy. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
We made this shit up and we can do better. From the money to the buildings to the way in which we live, we made it up out of our heads. Mm-hmm. It came from our imaginations. We don't have to be married to our imagination. We can actually expand our imaginations and make it better. Make it more optimal, make it perform better, make it work better for everybody. So just remember, this world, this system is just one possibility that happened to evolve out of our imaginations. There's an infinite number more of possibilities that we can create. So don't be shy, get loud, and start creating your new tomorrow today.
I love it. Ari, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. I definitely appreciate your time.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
All right. Whew. We went a little bit, little different direction this episode, didn't we? Right? I think it's good to do these things, right? To explore new areas, to boldly go where no one has gone before. I think I just dated myself by quoting Star Trek, but I want to give you a few thoughts I walked away with from today's show. Okay. As I usually do. Thought number 1. Whether it's a tough road or an easy one, yeah, it's still up to you. Yeah, Ari, like so many of my other guests, has faced so many obstacles in his life, right? Be it his religious beliefs, the persecution from others because of the way he looked, who his parents were, or any of the things that were in or out of his control. Look, here's the thing. Everyone on this planet, faces some kind of adversity. Now, your adversity might be far more excessive than mine, or vice versa. But that doesn't matter to the person that's going through the adversity. To them, it's just that, adversity. So I'm not here, nor are any of my guests here to say whose is worse than yours. No. What we want to impart is, by sharing these stories, is that no matter what adversity you have or are facing, that you can come out on the other side stronger and wiser for having experienced it. Now, let's be honest. Would you have choose not to experience it? Well, hell yeah. But as a result of whatever series of events you or we have had to experience our adversity, the question then really becomes, what are you going to do now, right? Are you going to step up, rise up, start, restart, and kickstart all those dreams and desires you have boiling inside you? Or are you just going to continue to bitch about all the reasons why you believe you can't do it? And like I just got finished saying, all the reasons you can't do it, but you still know deep in your heart that you could if you really, really wanted to. All right. Thought number 2, learn whatever you can from wherever you can and go deep. Ari shares how he learned a wide variety of tactics and techniques within his area of expertise, and this turned around and opened doors and opportunities that enable him to work on bigger industry names. And that turned around and opened up opportunities to work on sports celebrities, which he leveraged to learn even more tactics and more techniques, to the point that by his third year of practice, he had over 5,000 hours of training and internships. Now, as already noted, this is the level way beyond, well, not way beyond, it's in a level beyond even what it takes to become an MD or a chiropractor. See, but to me, the key here is he went deep inside his areas of expertise. He wasn't out there learning every single thing there was out there to learn about this or about that. No. He focused on his areas of expertise and went deep into that knowledge base, thus creating his expertise within that area. I mean, we've heard this phrase used before, and I've mentioned it. Don't go a mile wide and an inch deep. Go an inch wide and a mile deep. Yeah? All right. Thought number 3. And this one is going to be a little different than any of the other podcasts, but I got to say it. Stand up and fight for what you believe in. Now, here's the thing. I don't pretend to make this podcast about any one political side or the other. I don't lean towards any one religious side or the other, any one sexual side or the other. I prefer to hear from all the sides and then make up my own damn mind. And since that's how I believe, that is how I want to treat you as a listener. Because look, I'm not here to thrust my beliefs upon you. I'll offer them up as a side for you to hear from. I'll offer up other sides from those I interview for you to hear from as well. It's not about whether I agree 100% or 50% in what they say. It's about getting all the sides out there. Now, all that said, there's one topic that Ari brings up about standing up for the bullies. And this is one I personally am very passionate about. For me, it's just not the bullies that are in big pharma or the insurance communities, right? It's about all the bullies out there that would have you believe that you should not step outside of this box. And this box could be this predefined notion about who you are, what you're capable of, or what they believe you should know, or what they believe that you're capable of handling, or anything else. Look, I'm from the USA, and we here are we the people, and I'm doing that in air quotes, we the people. It is about we the people. It's not about you, the big tech. It's not about you, the big pharma. It's not about you, the prison industry, or the tobacco industry, or the alcohol industry, or whatever industry you want to choose. It's about we the flippin' people. And the moment that you forget that, and eventually we, the people that buy your products and pay for your services, we will eventually stand up against the very thing you're trying to get us to kowtow to. Ladies and gentlemen, stand the hell up for yourself and for those other little guys out there that cannot stand up for themselves and that do not have a voice for themselves through your product and through your service and through your damn voice. Stand up for what you believe in. All right. I feel my blood boiling now, right? All right. Now, thought number 4, motivation means nothing without action. This comes off to stand up for what you believe in, right? It's all good and it's all great, Tracy, to stand up for what you believe in, but if you don't take some damn action with it, yeah, all that motivation means nothing, right? And then action without action means nothing without a plan. And a plan means nothing about knowing who you are. Oh my God, how many times have you heard me on this podcast or in the Dark Horse Tribe Facebook group or on my Facebook profile say this very thing? No, you gotta know who you are at the core, ladies and gentlemen. This is and ever will be the starting point. Who are you? And then what do you want? Then why do you want it? All right? All right, now let's look at those things, and then once you know that, right, once you know that who you are and what you want and why you want it, then you can look at the things that are in the way, those obstacles that are between you, who you are, and what you want. Those, and how to get around those, or through those, or under those, or over those, or smashing through those, that becomes your plan. Once you have your plan, then you can start taking action towards your goal every single day. Like you hear me say, every single day. For me, within all of that, your motivation is stirred over and over and over again as you review who you are, what you want, what you stand for, why you want it, and what in the hell is getting in the way of you getting it. Each one of those things can stoke that fire burning within you and get it to rise higher and higher. Then holy shit, you can start creating a plan to get from where you are now to where you want to be. Right? And that further stokes the fire. Then you start believing even more and more in your ability to reach that damn goal, driving your motivation even further. Then you start taking action on that plan and you drive even more motivation. Phew, right? And you get out there and you start getting shit done that you want to get done based on who you are and where you are and why you want to get there. Right? That's it. That's the end of it right there. That's all of it all wrapped up in the one package. All right, let me dial this down just a little bit for you, all right? So here's the question I always ask you. What ideas or inspiring tips or thoughts resonated with you? All right, whatever they are, take some time today, right? If you're driving right now, the minute you stop, heck, go ahead and pull over safely right now and write them down so that you can put them into action today, so that you can get out there, you can run your race, you can get your results. And then you know what? I want to hear about them. Seriously, email me at tracy@darkhorseschooling.com and share the tips or ideas that you came away with, how you put them in action, and what results you got from them so that you can share your win, right? Tell me about it and I'll share your win with the rest of the Dark Horse tribe. Heck, I'll probably even go ahead and bring you on the show so you can share it with them directly. Whew. Got my heart rate up and going today. Thank you, Ari. All right. Next week, our interview guest is going to be Jason Linett. Now, Jason Linett is a certified professional hypnotist. No, wait, don't leave me yet. Jason has dedicated about 2 decades to helping his clients harness the science of positive persuasion strategies to quickly and easily rewrite negative thought patterns. He reveals the secrets of hypnotic communication and shares specific business influence systems to supercharge your business growth. You're going to want to check this one out. All right, now because I know you want to keep getting all these valuable tips and blood-boiling inspirational stories from this podcast, please go on down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're there, drop us a 5-star rating. Write us some kind words in the review. Tell us what it is you believe and what you stand up for, right? And of course, don't keep all this entrepreneurial GOLD to yourself. Share this podcast with other entrepreneurs and business owners you know will get value from it. And with that, I'm going to leave you as I always do. Think successfully and take action.
Thank you for listening to the Dark Horse Entrepreneur Podcast.
And you know this!
Thanks for tuning in.
Check us out at www.darkhorseschooling.com.
All right.
My name is Tracy Brinkman.